So I finished the Fractal Prince by Hannu Rajaniemi, the second book in the Jean le Flambeur trilogy. And like I said with the first book, this is like the fourth or fifth time I've read these books, and still super enjoying them. This one I probably enjoy the least, but that doesn't mean it's a bad book. It just doesn't reach those highs of the first and last books, which maybe is a sort of a second book sort of thing. Also, this one's a lot more difficult to understand. I still don't feel like I understand it, but I still feel like it can be understood. I feel like if you have the intellect, if you have the brain power like the author does, you can understand it and it can make sense. And even if I don't understand it, still knowing that it does make, or feeling that it does make sense, makes it just as good as if it did make sense to me, if that makes any sense. I've used a lot of those same words multiple times in that sentence. The structure of this one's really cool. So the first few chapters seem really confusing and until it all sort of comes together and it's revealed which character is which and everything. So we have one character, Jean le Flambeur, who's undercover, but we don't realize it's him until much later, like sort of a quarter of the way through the book. But it makes it very confusing at first, but I think it's very cool. They're normally told in the third person present tense, but whenever we have a Jean POV, it is first person present tense. And that carries on from the previous novel. So this one continues telling us about the Sobornost. Has a bit of Zoku stuff, but not as much. So it sort of expands on our knowledge of the Zoku. The Zoku are these groups of people who are become quantum entangled with each other through these Zoku jewels, which if you need something, you speak into the jewel or sort of pray to the jewel that, hey, I need this thing done, and then the Zoku will optimize resources and solve that if possible, or whenever possible. And the Zoku also deal a lot with quantum stuff, which the Sobornost do not like, because the Sobornost are trying to upload all of humanity and everything into a digital world, and having the quantum world, it makes things unpredictable and sort of unclear and messy, whereas they want everything clean cut and sort of understandable. So I guess I'll tell this one chronologically. At the end of the last book, it's revealed that Jean le Flambeur had left the oubliette and gone back to sort of steal something from the gods, and turns out it's this thing called the Kaminari jewel that is a very special Zoku jewel. And it has, again, I don't understand what planked locks are, but it can somehow open the plank locks of the universe and allow someone to be able to change the very fabric of reality, is my understanding. And so Jean tries to steal this by getting Chen's founder codes, Matjek Chen, sort of the preeminent founder of the Sobornost, and using his codes, which is the founder codes are like their passwords, but it's also like sort of a part of their being. Then he'll become Chen, and then he can steal the jewel, and yeah. So it's sort of slowly revealed that this whole series is about stealing this jewel. So the Pellegrini wants it to sort of keep Chen on her side. Chen wants it because he wants to rewrite the universe. He has a big fear of death, and he wants to end death. And Jean le Flambeur wants it because he's Jean le Flambeur and he just wants to steal cool stuff. And so Jean was about to steal Chen's founder codes, and we sort of see this scene, but he gets found out, and it almost seems like he wanted to be found out in a weird way. But he has an escape route, and he's escaping and fleeing, but Chen actually sacrifices billions of goggles and all this infrastructure to sort of lock Jean in place. And when they capture Jean, they activate something in his brain which wipes all his memory, and then they stick him in the dilemma prison. And so that's how he ends up as he is in the first book. That's how he gets captured. We also get the backstory of Mieli, who it's not quite revealed. It's revealed that she's not born on Ort. She was given to the Ortians from some other people who it's really hinted at, but it's the Zoku. She was a Zoku child given to the Ortians, and there she fell in love with this girl Saidan, and they built a great work together, this sort of marvelous piece of art. And then they decided that Saidan really wanted to explore the inner system and see old Earth and whatnot, so they go on vacation, and they visit Venus, where, unbeknownst to Mieli, there is something going to happen. The Sobernost are about to upload this city on Venus. And so tons of pilgrims and tourists and people are coming to Venus to either be uploaded by the Sobernost or just to witness this massive singularity-inducing compression of all matter into data. And so Mieli finds out that Saidan wants to be uploaded and wants to sort of live forever, and she's kind of appalled by this and convinces her, hey, let's not. But when they're standing there watching the event happen, Saidan lets go of Mieli and runs towards the thing and gets uploaded. And so Mieli's sort of crushed by this. She makes her way into the Pellegrini's temple and sort of swears herself to the Pellegrini service if she'll only give her Saidan back. And that's sort of how Mieli becomes what she becomes, and sort of she slowly gives up her body and becomes like gets a bunch of sober tech. She, like we saw in the last book, she never wanted to have her goggle lover created. She wanted to be a singular entity, but in the second book, she gives up that freedom. And then in this book, which we'll get to at the end, she goes one step further. But then finally finds a line she won't cross. So, poor Mieli. She also created Perhonen. So I don't think I talked much about Perhonen in the last one, but Perhonen's her ship that she has sung from Vaki, this sort of weird space choral stuff that she literally sang to, and that's how it was formed. And the sort of, not AI, but the personality of the ship, Perhonen herself, she called up from the depths of the Allen in the underworld. And it seems like Perhonen was like a mind of one of the ancestors, the Ortian ancestors. So a bit more background. So Matjek Chen has this thing, the Kaminari Jewel. The Sobernost sort of stumbled upon it during the Protocol War around Jupiter when they were fighting the Zoku, and they managed to get this thing, the Kaminari Jewel, but they're unable to access it. So in order to access the Kaminari Jewel, you need to have an innocence about you. And it turns out Matjek Chen does not have this innocence. He has lost his innocence. And so he's trying to get that back. He's trying to get his innocence back so he can open the Kaminari Jewel. And we get a lot of Matjek Chen's backstory and childhood in this book. So he had been innocent as a child, like all children are, but he basically saw some stuff on the internet and had access to the dark web, which showed him some stuff about death, and sort of took away his innocence. But unbeknownst to Chen, he had his mind uploaded previous to this. His parents had sort of bought, as a type of insurance, a mind upload thing where his mind was copied and stored in this virtual reality inside of this spaceship sitting on top of a nuclear bomb, because his parents were super rich. And so that's what the rich did when they have so much money, is they buy these sort of heavens for their children, so that they don't have to worry about anything happening to their kids. So that had happened to Matjek Chen, and he didn't realize it, but Jean le Flambeur and the Pellegrini did, because they were a bit older than him and knew him growing up. And this information was lost during the collapse. And another very weird thing. So this book, a lot of this book is about stories, and there seems to be these four beings called the On, A-U-N, who are sort of these sort of gods on Earth, and they're described as being like stereotypical character tropes that have popped up again and again throughout humanity's history. Whenever humanity makes a story, they have a sort of a goddess and a mentor and a shapeshifter and a trickster. So these tropes have come up again and again and again, but they sort of gain physical form and sort of become real individuals during the life of Matjek Chen. So he had these imaginary friends, these four imaginary friends, the Chimney Princess, the Green Soldier, the Light Kraken, and the Flower Prince. Now the name Flower Prince rings bells because Jean le Flambeur is referred to as the man with the name of the flower, and he's referred to by the Pellegrini as my Flower Prince. Anyway, so he had these four imaginary friends, and he knew that when he grows up, the imaginary friends are going to disappear. He didn't want that. So he put on this sort of thing that detects brainwaves and sort of the same technology they use for mind uploading, and focused it on the section of his brain where his imaginary friends lived, and was able to sort of give them form. and it's hinted that that's where Jean le Flambeur came from. He was an imaginary friend of Jack Chen. But Jean himself says that that can't be quite right because he still has other memories before Jack Chen, memories of being in the desert, of being a thief, and being in a prison, and being released by the Pellegrini. So I don't like that he's just sort of this archetypal character trope created from someone's brain. I like it much more if he's just a normal guy who's sort of stolen his way to immortality in the far future. But we'll see in the next book what becomes of that. And so this whole book becomes hunting down this old goggle of Jack Chen's where he has his innocence. So everybody wants it. They either want it to become Jack Chen and have lots of power. They want it to Jack Chen wants it himself to get his innocence back and open the Kaminari jewel. The Pellegrini wants it to have power over the Chen because there's a civil war coming in the Sobernost and she's in a very weak position. So that's why she's done this whole thing. So that's why Jean has been released from prison, is to steal this thing, all so that they can get the Kaminari jewel. So the book starts with this box. Remember, he had this box with a Sobernost founder inside of it, and it's like he can't open the box. If he does, everything inside it will die. And so he's trying to figure out the box, and then it's revealed that this thing called the Hunter is coming for him. So the Pellegrini, Chen, and Sasha, the Engineer of Souls, all these Sobernost founders have created this thing called the Hunter. And the Pellegrini sends it out to catch Jean le Flambeur. But she warns them that, hey, this thing's going to come and kill you. And so Jean quickly uses a Zoku router to enter the sort of alternate, or the virtual reality of the box and confront Sumanguru, the goggle, the founder goggle inside, and trick him into getting his code. So Jean le Flambeur now has Sumanguru's codes, which means he can become Sumanguru, which he does to sort of scare off the Hunter, or sort of push the Hunter away. So Sumanguru had been a warlord in Central Africa who had fought against goggle slavery and forced uploads and whatnot, and became a founder himself. He's sort of seen as a very, very scary guy. So they get to Earth, which has this thing called the Gourd around it, which is kind of like a Dyson sphere of tech being built around it by the Sobernost, by the Sienkus, if I'm mispronouncing that right. They are archaeologists. They're trying to forcibly upload Earth. But Earth has this thing called wild code from the collapse, where there's just like wild code and nanites everywhere that just make a mess of things and will destroy sober tech as soon as it comes in contact with it. And they had tried to forcibly upload Earth 20 years previously, or I don't know if it's 20 exactly, but sometime in the past. And the AUN, these three gods, had risen up against the Sobernost and protected the city. So there's this one city on Earth called Seer, which had been Seer in the sky. It seems to have been an orbital habitat that fell down and crashed during the collapse, and humanity sort of has existed around it. They protect themselves from the wild code by these secret names, which it all sounds very, very like magic, but it's still based in technology. So the secret names are basically like voice commands to activate nanites. Like they have magic carpets, but it's really just telling the nanites to form a solid base thing that can fly, but it's like a magic carpet. So the culture in this one, like in the first book, in the Oubliette, it was very much Belle Epoque Paris, with lots of French names, but also some Hebrew words. This one's very Arabic, so a lot of Arabic words. Again, all the sort of made up techno words in these stories are all actually real words, just not English words. So lots of Arabic words, but also lots of kind of Spanish last names. So I got the vibe that they were kind of like around Morocco or something, because at one point they're talking about going over what had been the Mediterranean and entering what had been Turkey. So anyways, they're somewhere in the Arabic world. So Mieli enters a sort of mercenary company whose goal is they go into the desert, the Wild Code Desert, which is a very dangerous place because of the Wild Code, and they sort of collect goggles and sell them to the Sobernost. So this Earth's whole economy runs on the goggle trade. Meanwhile, Jean, masquerading as a Sumanguru, goes into the gourd and asks the Hsiang Kus if he can see an old sort of construct of Earth's past. So they've sort of constructed a virtual history of Earth, which he goes into, and he visits some of his old memories when he meets Ma Jiaqchen, and then he goes back and further into Ma Jiaqchen's childhood to learn about this this goggle of the child Ma Jiaqchen that had been uploaded. And he does this to gain information, but also to kind of accidentally let slip to the other Sobornos that there is a goggle of Chen that exists, because he believes that it would be easier, instead of finding it himself, to get someone else to find it and then to steal it from them. So it seems like he messed up, but it was all part of the plan. After he does this, they sent him down to Earth to do like a murder mystery, which I won't get into because it's not real. Well, it's relevant, but basically he sort of explores Earth and teams up with this girl Tawadud and her sister, and then there's a whole conspiracy and whodunit, and it turns out it was this other guy. And a really good story, but for the sake of brevity is probably be a 45-minute video. For the sake of brevity, we will skip it. So now everyone knows that there is a goggle of a baby Ma Jiaqchen out there, not baby, but young Ma Jiaqchen, and which is extremely valuable. So everyone's there. Chen enters Gubernaya, which is a planet-sized sphere of diamond that is just like for pure computation, and all his spaceships and everything show up. The Senkyus are trying to find this thing. The guy on the surface of Earth, who is one of the goggle merchants, who's trying to get the Sobornos, he's on the Sobornos side. He wants them to forcibly upload Earth so that he can, for reasons anyways, he's in charge of going to find it, and he's gotten the secret password, the secret name to unlock the Jannah of the canon, it's called. So Jannah is Arabic for like a paradise or a heaven or whatever. Of the canon is because it's revealed later that it's literally a spaceship underground. And yeah, so Jean goes back to his ship, or the ship Perhonen, and Mieli's on the ground. She's there where the Jannah of the canon is, but there is a whole host of mercenaries with her, and she's like, and Jean sees this and is like, oh no, Mieli, you'll have to come back. We can't do this. We would need an army to be able to fight these mercenaries. We'll try something else. But he's clearly doing it to like implant in her mind, and so she says, if we need an army, I will become an army, and prays to the Pellegrini and says like, make many of me, we need to do this. And so the Pellegrini goes to her and says like, I've never taken a goggle of you before because I respect, like, you don't want to be more than one, but you're growing up now. Good, I'll do it. And so using the Piku Tech fabricators in the gorge, she fabricates a host of fractal angels, which I think the book should be called A Fractal Angel, or The Fractal Angel, because the third book's called The Causal Angel, and this one's called The Fractal Prince. But in this book, at this point, they specifically use the term Fractal Angel. But it is a wonderful scene. It's one of those scenes in books that I've clearly visualized, and I would love to see represented in film. So in my mind, this is what happens. So in the story, Mieli puts like a knife or a sword or something to this guy's throat, Abu Nuwas, who is the guy in charge of the mercenary companies, or who had hired them, and says that she claims this goggle of Chen for the Pellegrini. And he kind of looks at her and like, who are you? And she says, I am Mieli, daughter of so-and-so, of the whatever, Koto, lover of Saidan, of blah, blah, blah. And so are they. She points up to the sky, and then this host of Valkyrie-like, angel-like beings descend to the surface. And Mieli's metacortex activates, and so that means that she's able to be herself individually, but also coordinate and experience and be all of the other Mielis that are suddenly created, and can just becoming more than one. And so at that point, I imagine visualizing, seeing Mieli's POV, and then the screen cuts in half, and then we see the POV of her and another version of her, and then it splits again, and then it keeps splitting, and we have this spiral pattern of all these different frames, of all these different POVs of what one of the Mieli are seeing, and then we sort of zoom in on one, it becomes the full screen, and we see an action sequence of Mielis in the background fighting from the POV of this one Mieli, and they're dying and exploding, and then when that one dies, it goes black, and it zooms back out to the fractal view of all the different ones, then we zoom in on another one, and so on and so forth. That's how I saw it in my mind. So basically, a really cool fight happens. And of course, Mieli wins in the end. She goes into the Jana of the cannon, makes a copy of the goggle, takes it back up to Perhonen, and reveals that she spoke to Matt Jack Chen, and he really is just an innocent kid. And this is sort of the, like, if you could go back in time and kill baby Hitler, would you? Because Matt Jack Chen's like one of the evilest slaver persons of the whole solar system, but as a baby, he's just like an innocent baby. He's not a baby, he's like a child. And so the Pellegrini and Jean are like, great, give it over to us and we'll use it to take over his founder codes and we'll win or whatever. But this is where she draws her line. She's like, no, this is a child, this is an innocent child, we are not doing anything to harm it. And they're all upset with her, but at this point she apologizes to Perhonen, but she says she can't cross this line, and so she sings out the final song, which, like I said, Perhonen was made by song and singing. So Mieli shouts out this song that makes it so that Perhonen basically shouts out to the system that, hey, Jean le Flambeur is here. And so the hunter, which is trying to find Jean le Flambeur, and everyone else descend upon Perhonen and just start tearing it apart. And at this point, I'm kind of confused of what happens, but at some point, what I think happens is this. Pellegrini realizes that Jean's about to be caught, and so she sort of frees Jean from the sort of locks that she's had on his body and mind, saying, hey, if you can escape, you will be free. But she also frees the all defector from Jean's body. So it's revealed later that when she broke Jean out of prison with Mieli, her plan was to also break out the all defector and keep him hidden inside Jean's body as like a backup plan, so that if Jean ever got caught, she could unleash the all defector, and that would be like a plan C. And that's seemingly what she does. The all defector, posing as Jean, gets caught by Matt Jack Chen. Chen thinks that he caught Jean le Flambeur, and he's like, ho ho ho, I've won. But then it's revealed that this isn't Jean le Flambeur, this is the all defector, and you've actually lost. So the all defector takes over Chen's mind because he's like super evil. So now Chen, the most powerful, preeminent founder in Sobernost in the system, is now the all defector, this being that never cooperates and always sort of does what they want and is like the most selfish being in the galaxy. Yikes. And the all defector then sort of imprisons the Pellegrini in this virtual reality and then flees to sort of take over the universe. Meanwhile, actual Jean le Flambeur and Perhonen are on the ship. Mieli apologizes to Perhonen and says, I'm sorry. And then Perhonen says, I'm sorry too. I always loved you more than she did. And then sort of puts Mieli in a bubble and shoots her off into space to sort of save her. And like reveals that Perhonen has loved Mieli way more than Saidan ever did. And there's been hints throughout this book that things with Saidan are not exactly as they seem. And Perhonen even hints that Saidan was never real and never existed. So Mieli's doing all of this for nothing. But Perhonen always loved her and so allows her to escape. And so she gets shot off into space with a Zoku jewel, because there had been one in the ship that Jean had stolen. And when she wakes up later, she whispers her volition to the Zoku jewel that she wants to be saved or whatever, and then the Zoku show up. And when Mieli awakens, she says, Mother. So that's sort of hinting that she is actually a Zoku, or a member of the Zoku. And that sort of ends that part of the story. Meanwhile, the ship is being torn apart by hunters and destroyed, and Perhonen's like, John, I hate you, I hope you burn. And John's like, come on, Perhonen, take us down to the surface of Earth. She's like, the wild code will tear us apart. He's like, who cares? Like, what else do we have to lose? So she agrees and says, look, Jean, you always manage to find a way out of things. Promise me that you'll look after Mieli. And so Jean agrees. And he keeps his promises. Say what you will of Jean, he always keeps his promises. So they crash land on the planet. And at this point, the Sobernost have started forcibly uploading the Earth, but also Matt Jack Chen has released these things called dragons that are consuming the Earth, And dragons are a weird thing. So in this world on Earth, stories are dangerous. So fictional stories are dangerous because they can sort of induce a self loop in someone's head where someone can take over your body. Again, this is the part I don't understand, so I'm kind of skipping over it. But because on Earth in the Wild Coat Desert there are all these genies basically, which are just the disembodied souls or uploaded minds of people, and then there are the normal people who have bodies, and a way to get around it is some people entwine with one another where the two minds become one, and then they can sort of see into the Wild Coat Desert and view the aether, which is like a sort of virtual reality thing, while also being having a physical body. But these dragons are things that do not have a self loop. So a self loop is like sort of a metacognitive thing where you think about what you're thinking about, and you can reflect on yourself, and that sort of reflection on oneself changes how oneself acts, which again reflects it's a loop. But these dragons don't seem to have that. These dragons were beings or things that were created by the Sobernost as sort of, it was their greatest sin, so they tried to create their own minds instead of naturally getting uploaded minds. They tried to create their own, and that created these sort of AI, non-sentient or non-conscious but still sentient minds that just want to eat and consume, but Matt Jack Chen's the only one that can control them or something. Anyway, so Earth's being utterly destroyed, and so the people of Earth go into the desert and pray to the On, who had protected them in the past. And like I said, the Chimney Princess, the Green Soldier, the Light Kraken all show up, and they're like, we're sorry that we can't help you at this point, but our brother has returned and maybe he can. And boom, there's Jean le Flambeur, and he's like, I don't know what you mean about that I'm your brother, and I kind of don't get it, but hey, I have a plan. You're not going to like it, but it's a plan. And so what Jean does is he, using the technology that he learned about how to take over people's bodies using fictional stories, is that he basically takes all of Earth and all of the people in the Wild Coat Desert and the embodied and disembodied, and turns them all into stories, which he then stores inside the jhana of the canon, this virtual reality where this goggle of Matt Jack Chen is residing. So it looks like a library. So Matt Jack Chen and Jean le Flambeur are the only sort of beings there, but the rest of Earth is stored in this sort of, looks like a library inside this virtual reality. And then he fires off the jhana of the canon, and it shoots off into space and becomes a spaceship and starts heading for Saturn. And so yeah, Jean has done it again. He's managed to escape. He's heading to Saturn, and he's got all of Earth with him, but he also has the goggle of a child Matt Jack Chen, and we'll see what he does with that in the third book. And the last thing is that the All Defector and the Pellegrini, before he traps the Pellegrini, they have the Kaminari jewel because they've taken over the mind of Matt Jack Chen. He sort of is Matt Jack Chen now, who has the Kaminari jewel, but Matt Jack Chen has never been able to open it because he doesn't have this innocence. But I guess the All Defector says something like, Chen could never open it, it had to be you, or it was made to open for you or something, which I don't understand that. So the Pellegrini gets the Kaminari jewel, and it opens up, and inside is a little white card that says, here, I'm gonna find what it says, because I gotta read it. It says, Jean le Flambeur, gentleman burglar, will return when your Zoku jewels are genuine. So basically sometime in the past, presumably right before he got caught the first time, Jean had stolen the Kaminari jewel, so he already had it this whole time, but of course he doesn't remember it because he had his memories wiped. So we don't know where the real Kaminari jewel is, and it's just that classic Jean le Flambeur moment that really sort of brings the story to a conclusion. So that is the Fractal Prince by Hannu Rajaniemi.